The invisible girl, the alien city, was alive with noise and movement. Glowing towers reaching toward the dark sky. Ships landed and left. Traders shouted their prices. And lights from 100 stalls burned like tiny stars in the middle of all. This life sat a lonely orphan girl. She was small, her body thin and weak. Her clothes were nothing more than old rags. Her skin was pale and dull compared to the shining colors of her kind. Her eyes carried no light, no hope, for years. She had sat in that market corner, and for years no one had ever truly looked at her. Her own people passed by her like she was invisible. They whispered cruel things, not caring if she heard. She is not even a real female. One merchant muttered, "Who would ever want her?" Sneered another. The girl lowered her head and hugged her knees. She had heard these words so many times that she started to believe them. When children ran past, they pointed and laughed. When adults saw her, they turned their faces away. To them, she was a mistake. A shadow, something to be forgotten. She lived by scraps of food that fell from tables. And sometimes she went hungry for days, but hunger was nothing compared to the heavy loneliness pressing on her chest. Still, she survived, day after day. Year after year, she waited for something, though she no longer knew what. Perhaps she hoped for a kind word, a warm glance, or even someone who would see her as alive. But none came. One cold evening, as the markets were closing, a sound of heavy boots echoed through the street. A human soldier was walking past. His uniform was worn from travel, his face tired but steady. Most aliens moved aside quickly when a human walked through. 4 humans were strange, feared, and respected all at once. The orphan girl did not lift her head. She expected him to pass by like everyone else. Why would a human notice her? No one ever did, but then the boots stopped. The girl felt a shadow fall over her. Slowly, she raised her head. Her alien eyes widened. The human was looking right at her. For a long moment, he said nothing. His eyes studied her face, the way she shook in the cold, the way she tried to hide her thin frame. And then, to her shock, he knelt down. The crowd around them froze. Traders whispered, "What is he doing?" Others frowned in confusion. A human kneeling in front of an unwanted orphan. It was unthinkable. The man reached into his pack and pulled out a small piece of bread. He held it out to her. His voice was calm but strong. "Here, take it." The girl's hands trembled. She stared at the bread, not believing it was for her. "Why?" She whispered in a broken voice. Her people had only ever thrown stones or curses at her. Never kindness. The human gave a small smile. "Because you look hungry." Her chest tightened. A warmth she did not understand filled her heart. Her hand slowly reached forward, as if afraid the food would vanish. She took it and held it close like it was treasure. Then she ate, quickly, hungrily. Tears forming in her eyes. The whispers grew louder around them. Some mocked, some were angry. Why? Is he wasting food on her? Doesn't he know she's worthless? That's not a female. That's nothing. The girl lowered her head again, shame washing over her. But before she could slip back into the shadows, the human spoke again. His voice was sharp. This time loud enough for the crowd to hear. "She is not nothing," he said. His eyes burned as he looked at the people who mocked her. "She is someone." The marketplace grew silent. No one dared reply. The alien orphan looked up at him. Her lips parted in disbelief. Someone called her someone. Her throat ached, her eyes wet. She tried to speak, but no sound came. All she could do was stare at the strange human who saw her when no one else ever had. For the first time in her life, she did not feel invisible. For the first time, a spark of hope flickered inside her. But deep inside, she wondered, why did he stop? Why did he see her when the whole world refused? The answer would change her life forever. The humans gazed. The alien orphan sat frozen, clutching the last crumbs of bread in her hands. Her heart raced as she felt the weight of the human's eyes still fixed on her. No one had ever looked at her like that before, not with kindness, not with patience, not with respect. It made her chest ache in a way she did not understand. She dared to glance up, afraid he might suddenly laugh at her or leave. But the human did not move away. Instead, he lowered himself so his gaze met hers. His eyes were steady, calm, and warm, like a fire burning in the middle of a cold night. "What is your name?" he asked softly. The girl froze. Her lips trembled for a long time. No one had asked her that question. No one cared to know. She had become just that orphan, or that worthless one. The sound of her name had almost been forgotten. Buried under the weight of insults, she hesitated, her voice barely a whisper. "Lyra." The human gave a small nod. "Lyra," he repeated, as though testing the sound, as though making sure it was real. "That's a good name." Her chest tightened again. He said it like it mattered, like she mattered. But the crowd around them stirred, angry murmurs rising like a storm. "She's not worth speaking to." One alien spat. "Why does a human waste his time?" Sneered another. Lyra lowered her head quickly, shame burning through her body. She wanted to disappear into the ground, to shrink so small that no one could see her. Her people always made sure she remembered her place beneath them. Unwanted, unloved. But then she heard the human's voice again. Quiet but firm. "Don't listen to them," he said. "Look at me, Lyra." Her hands shook, but slowly, painfully. She lifted her eyes again. His gaze had not changed. It was steady, unshaken by the cruelty of the crowd. Something inside her stirred. A tiny flame fighting against years of darkness. The human reached into his pack once more and pulled out a small flask of water. He offered it to her. Lyra hesitated, staring at the clear liquid. She could almost feel the eyes of everyone watching, judging, waiting for her to refuse. But her throat was dry, her body weak, and her heart desperate. With trembling fingers, she reached forward and took it. She drank carefully, almost expecting it to be snatched away, but no one took it. The water cooled her throat, filling her with life again. The whispers in the crowd grew louder. "This is shameful," someone muttered. "He's treating her like she's worth something." Another hissed. A group of alien youths stepped forward, smirking cruelly. Their leader sneered, "Hey human, why are you talking to her? Don't you know what she is? She's nothing, not even a true female." Lyra flinched at the words, her heart sinking again. She wanted to cry. She wanted the human to leave before he too was dragged down by her shame. But instead, he turned, his gaze toward the bullies. His jaw tightened, his eyes hard as stone. He did not raise his voice, but every word struck like iron. "I see someone valuable," he said. "I see someone you've all chosen to ignore." The bullies laughed, their voices sharp. "Valuable? She's worthless. She's broken. She will never be chosen. She will never be anything." Lyra squeezed her eyes shut, the words cutting deep like a blade. She knew them too well. She had lived with them for so long, but suddenly she felt warmth. The human had placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "Touch!" she gasped, her body tense. No one had touched her kindly in years. Not since her parents had died. The touch was firm, but gentle, protective. "You don't have to believe them anymore," he whispered. "Believe me instead." Her eyes opened wide with shock. His gaze had not moved away from hers. His words echoed in her chest, fighting against the chains of pain and rejection. The crowd around them grew restless. Some laughed, some shook their heads in disgust. But there were others who simply watched, confused, wondering why a human would bother with a worthless orphan. The bullies stepped closer, their eyes narrowing. "Stay away from her," human. The leader snarled. She's cursed. She doesn't deserve food or water or a place to sleep. Leave. Her too wrought Lyra's heart sank. She wanted to beg the human to walk away. To save himself from trouble, she whispered weakly, "Please, you should go. They'll hurt you. They always hurt anyone who tries to help me, but the human only." Shook his head. His eyes never left the bullies. His voice carried strength. "Then let them try." The bullies blinked in surprise. They had expected fear, retreat, surrender, but instead they saw fire in his eyes, fire that promised a fight. Lyra's breath caught. She stared at him, disbelief flooding her heart. Why was he risking himself for her? Why was he standing between her and the cruelty of her own kind? The air grew heavy, tension thick in the marketplace. The bullies clenched their fists, ready to strike. The crowd leaned in, hungry for conflict. And in the center of it all, the poor orphan girl sat trembling, her alien heart torn between fear and a feeling she had never known before for the first time in her life. Someone was willing to fight for her, and that someone was human. The fight for her dignity, the marketplace, grew louder, shadows circling like hungry predators. The bullies stepped closer, their sneers cutting deeper than any blade around them. The crowd whispered and watched. Hungry for a show, Lyra sat frozen, her thin arms wrapped tightly around herself. She wished the ground would open and swallow her whole. The leader of the bullies, taller and broader than the rest, cracked his knuckles. "Move aside, human," he hissed. "She is nothing, not a female. Not even worth the air she breathes." The human did not move. His boots remained firm on the dusty stones. His shoulders straightened, his eyes sharp as steel, fixed on the group in front of him. Slowly, he spoke, his voice low but carrying. "Across the square, she is someone." The words struck like thunder. The crowd gasped. Some muttered angrily. Others laughed as if it was madness. But Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Her heart pounded wildly. No one had ever defended her before. Not like this. The bullies laughed harshly. "Someone. This broken thing." One of them spat on the ground near her feet. "She is a mistake. She'll never bear children, never be chosen, never be wanted." Lyra flinched, shame stabbing through her like a knife. She buried her face in her knees, hot tears sliding down her cheeks. Her heart screamed for the human to leave before they hurt him too. But then she heard his boots scrape the ground. He had taken a step forward. "If you want to harm her," the human said, his voice cold as winter, "you will have to go through me." The bullies blinked, shocked for only a second before anger twisted their faces. One rushed forward, his fist aimed at the human's jaw. The crowd shouted, a wave of excitement bursting into the air. But the human was faster. His arm shot up, blocking the strike with a swift movement. He shoved the alien youth back, sending him stumbling into a fruit stand. The stand toppled, spilling bright fruits across the dirt. The crowd roared louder. The other bullies snarled and charged together. Lyra gasped. "No?" But her voice was drowned by the noise. The human fought like a storm. His fists struck with precision. His body moved with discipline. Each movement was quick, controlled, and powerful. He ducked under a swing, driving his shoulder into one attacker's chest. He twisted aside, catching another by the arm and throwing him to the ground. Dust rose around them as fists, kicks, and shouts filled the air. Lyra's eyes were wide with shock. Her small hands clutched her rags tightly. She had never seen anyone fight for her. Never. She could not breathe, watching every strike, every drop of blood. The leader growled and lunged with a blade, a crude weapon, sharp and deadly. Gasps filled the air. Lyra's scream cut through the chaos. "Look out!" The human spun, the blade grazing across his arm. Blood spilled bright against his sleeve. He winced but did not fall. Instead, he seized the leader's wrist, twisted hard, and the blade clattered to the ground. In one motion, the human kicked it far away. Silence fell for a heartbeat. The bullies groaned, bruised and beaten. Some crawled away, others limped. The leader clutched his arm, rage burning in his eyes. But when he looked into the human's steady gaze, he faltered. His courage broke like glass. With a snarl, he turned and spat on the ground. "Not worth it," he muttered, before retreating into the crowd. Slowly, the others followed, beaten, humiliated. Their sneers faded into silence. The crowd whispered fiercely, some in shock, some in anger, but none dared step forward. The human stood in the middle of the dust, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths, his arm bleeding, but his eyes calm. Lyra's body shook. She scrambled forward on her knees, her hands trembling as they reached for his wounded arm. "You're hurt," she whispered, her voice breaking. The human looked down at her, and for the first time he smiled softly. "It's only a cut," he said. "Don't worry." But she did worry. Her tears fell faster. She pressed the cloth of her sleeve against his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Her small hands shook, as though she could not believe he had risked himself for her. Around them, the marketplace began to disperse. Some people muttered about foolish humans. Others looked away in silence. No one offered help. No one cared for the orphan girl, except him. Lyra's voice cracked as she whispered, "Why? Why would you do this for me?" The human crouched, so their eyes met again. His expression was serious, his voice steady. "Because you deserve better than what they give you." Her lips trembled, her chest tightened. She could not find words. She only stared at him, wide-eyed, her heart pounding. For so long she had believed the lies that she was nothing, invisible, worthless. But this human had stood against all of them. Bleeding, fighting, refusing to walk away. Her tears would not stop, but for the first time, they were not only from pain, they carried something else, something new, something fragile but bright. Hope. And as she clung to him, whispering his name in her mind, though she had not yet dared ask it, one thought burned in her heart: this human saw her. When no one else ever had, a home she never had. The fight had ended. But the marketplace still whispered. The human's arm was bleeding. Dust clung to his clothes, yet his back was straight and his eyes calm. Beside him, the alien orphan clutched his sleeve, her eyes wet and fearful. No one offered to help them. The crowd slowly drifted away, some shaking their heads, others whispering insults. To them, the orphan was still worthless, and the human foolish for protecting her. But for Lyra, everything had changed when the market was finally quiet. The human bent down. "Can you walk?" he asked gently. She nodded weakly, though her legs shook under her thin frame. He placed his strong hand beneath her arm, steadying her as she rose. The walk away from the city felt endless. Every step stirred questions in her heart. Why was he helping her? Where were they going? Would he leave her once they were far enough? Her chest burned with fear, but also with something else, something warm she had never felt before. At the edge of the colony, far from the bright towers and noise of the markets, the human stopped before a small shelter. It was simple, made of wood and metal scraps, but to Lyra it looked like a palace. Her kind had never given her even a corner to rest in. The human pushed the door open. Inside was a narrow bed, a small fire pit for warmth, and a table with simple tools. The air smelled of wood and smoke, not of rotting alleys or spilled garbage like the streets she slept in. "Sit," he said, guiding her to the bed. She hesitated, her hands clutching her rags. "It's to clean for me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't belong here." He crouched in front of her, his gaze steady. "You belong where you are safe," he said, "and you are safe here." Her eyes filled again. she sat slowly, her body trembling on the edge of the bed. The soft fabric beneath her felt unreal. For years, she had slept on cold stone, on dirt, on anything she could find. To sit on something warm felt like a dream. The human fetched a small cloth and water. He began cleaning the cut on his arm, but his movements were stiff. Lyra watched, her chest tightening. She swallowed hard before whispering, "Let me help." He looked at her, surprised. For a moment, he hesitated, then handed her the cloth. Her hands shook, but she pressed the cloth gently against his wound. Her thin fingers worked carefully. Every drop of blood she cleaned felt like proof of his sacrifice for her. "You shouldn't have fought them," she whispered, her voice heavy with guilt. "They will come for you again. They will come for me." The human's lips curved in two. A small smile, "Then I'll fight them again." Her heart jumped. She stared at him. Unable to understand, no one had ever risked anything for her, not even a glance. And here was a human bleeding because he had refused to leave her behind. As she tied a strip of cloth around his arm, her own tears dripped onto his skin. She quickly wiped them away, ashamed, but he did not mock her. He only said softly, "Don't cry. You are safe now, safe." The word echoed inside her. It was a word she had never believed belonged to her, and yet, sitting in this small shelter, tending to his wounds, she felt it for the first time. Hours passed, the human lit a small fire, and warmth filled the space. He shared his food with her, small portions of bread and soup. Lyra ate slowly, her hands shaking, tasting flavors she had not known in years. When the meal ended, she sat near the fire, staring into the flames. Her voice broke the silence. "Why did you help me?" "I am nothing." The human looked at her from across the fire, his eyes calm but full of something deep. "You are not nothing, Lyra," he said firmly. "You are someone worth protecting." Her chest tightened until she thought she might burst. Tears blurred her vision. She had dreamed of hearing those words her whole life, and now they had been spoken, not as pity, not as a lie, but as truth. The fire crackled, warming her frozen heart. She hugged herself tightly, trying to hold the feeling inside her. Her voice was small, almost a whisper. "If I stay here, they will hate you too. They already do," he said with a small shrug. "But that doesn't matter to me." Her lips parted in shock. He spoke as if her worth was more important than the judgment of the whole colony. For a long time, she could not speak, her voice trapped by the weight of her emotions. At last, she whispered, "Thank you." The words were weak, but they carried all the broken pieces of her soul. The human smiled faintly. "Rest, you need it." She lay down carefully on the bed, her body sinking into warmth she had never known. Her hands clutched the blanket tightly, afraid it might be taken away. But as the fire crackled and the human sat nearby, watching over her, sleep finally came. For the first time in her life, Lyra did not dream of loneliness. She dreamed of hope, and in that small shelter, far from the cold stares of her kind, the orphan girl began to feel what she had never felt before, that maybe, just maybe, she belonged somewhere. The alien council's judgment. The days that followed were quiet but strange. For the first time in her life, Lyra had a roof above her head, food in her stomach, and warmth from a fire. She still woke in the night, trembling from old nightmares, but every time she would see the humans sitting nearby, keeping watch, and her heart would calm. But peace never lasts long, not in a place where whispers travel faster than wind. Soon, the colony was filled with talk. The human has taken the orphan into his home. He treats her as if she is worth something. This is against tradition. The words spread like wildfire, reaching every ear, until, at last, they reached the High Council. The council was a circle of stern, powerful figures who guarded the old laws of the alien people. They believed their traditions could never be broken. And among those traditions was the belief that the orphan girl was cursed. Not a true female, unfit for family or honor. One morning, the council sent guards to the human's shelter. The door banged open, startling Lyra from her seat by the fire. Her heart froze when she saw the armored figures. "You are summoned." One guard said coldly, "The council demands your presence. Both of you." Lyra's hands shook. She wanted to run, to hide. She had spent her life avoiding the council's gaze, knowing they only saw her as filth, but the human placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "We'll go together," he said calmly. The walk through the streets was heavy. Crowds gathered, whispering and staring. Some jeered, others watched with cold curiosity. Lyra kept her eyes down, shame burning through her, but beside her. The human walked tall, his eyes unflinching. The council chamber was vast. Lit by glowing stones in the walls, the council members sat in a circle on raised thrones, their eyes sharp and filled with judgment. Lyra felt smaller than ever. Her body shook as she stood in the center with the human beside her. One elder leaned forward, his voice sharp. "You," he said to the human, "why have you taken this orphan into your home?" The human's voice was steady because she needed help. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Another elder scoffed. "Do you not know what she is? She is not a female, not a partner, not a mother. She is nothing." Lyra flinched, her chest tightening. She wanted to disappear. Her hands curled into fists at her side, but before the shame could crush her, the human spoke again, louder this time. "She is not nothing," he said. His eyes burned as he looked at the council. "She is Lyra. She is alive. She is worthy of dignity." Gasps filled the room. The councilors shifted in their seats, anger flashing in their eyes. No one had ever spoken for her like this. The eldest among them rose, his voice thundering, "You dare challenge our traditions, human? This orphan has no place among us. She is cursed, unfit. We forbid such bonds." The human stepped forward, his shoulders squared. "Your traditions are wrong," he said firmly. "If you cannot see her worth, then your eyes are blind." The chamber erupted in shouts. The councilors banged their staffs, demanding silence. Their eyes blazed with fury. Never had a human spoken against them. Never had anyone defended the orphan so boldly. Lyra's heart raced. Her breath came fast. She wanted to stop him, to beg him not to fight for her here. The council grew too angry. They could banish him, or worse. She clutched his sleeve, whispering, "Please, don't. They'll punish you." But he only glanced at her, his eyes soft. "I will not let them take your dignity," he whispered back. The eldest counselor raised his staff. "Then hear our judgment," he declared. His voice echoed through the chamber. "If you wish to keep her human, then you will be cast out of our colony. You may not walk among us again. If you abandon her, you may stay." The words struck like a blade. The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to the human, waiting. Lyra's body shook violently. Her heart collapsed under the weight of those words. She wanted to scream, to beg him to leave her. She could not let him throw away his place, his safety. "For her, please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Don't choose me. I'm not worth it." But the human did not look at the council. He looked only at her, his eyes calm, his voice firm. "Lyra, you are worth everything." The chamber gasped again. The councilors raged, shouting over one another. But the human's words had already struck like fire into Lyra's heart. Her tears spilled, falling onto the cold stone floor. The eldest slammed his staff down. "Then it is decided," he roared. "You are exiled, both of you. Leave this place at once, and never return." The guards stepped forward, their faces hard. The human placed himself between them and Lyra, guiding her toward the doors. His head was high, unbroken. Lyra stumbled beside him, her tears blinding her. Her whole body trembled. She could not understand it. He had chosen her, chosen exile, chosen rejection, chosen danger, all for her. As they stepped out into the cold air, the heavy doors closing behind them, the whispers of the colony followed. Cruel and sharp, but in her chest, something new burned brighter than fear. He had called her worthy. He had called her someone, and he had proved it, not with words alone, but with sacrifice. For the first time, the orphan girl felt that maybe she was not cursed, not broken, not invisible. Maybe she was loved. The choice of the heart, the heavy doors of the council chamber slammed shut behind them. The sound echoed like thunder in Lyra's chest. Exiled. The word tasted like ash on her tongue. She stumbled on the stone steps outside, her thin frame shaking as the human steadied her with his arm. The colony streets were crowded with faces. Some mocked, some whispered, some only stared to them. It was decided the human was a fool, and the orphan was a curse. Together. They were cast out. Lyra's heart crumbled under the weight of it. She pulled at his sleeve, her voice trembling. "You shouldn't have done it. You shouldn't have chosen me." Her eyes filled with tears. "Now you have nothing, because of me." But the human only looked at her with steady eyes, his voice calm but strong. "I still have something. I have you." The words cut into her like light breaking through darkness. Her lips parted, her breath caught. She wanted to believe. But years of rejection pulled at her like chains. "I will slow you down," she whispered. "I will make your life harder. I will bring you pain." He stopped walking and turned to face her fully. His hand gently lifted her chin so her alien eyes met his. His gaze burned with truth. "Lyra," he said softly, "you are not a burden. You are my choice." Her knees weakened. Her chest burned as if something heavy was breaking apart inside her. For so long she had been told she was nothing, and now this human stood in front of her. Calling her a choice, his choice, the crowd around them spat insults. Cursed orphan, blind human, let them rot together, but none of it touched him. He held her hand firmly and walked on. Beyond the colony gates, the land stretched wide and wild. The air was colder, harsher, but also free. Behind them, the gates clanged shut, sealing their exile. Before them lay only uncertainty. For a long while they walked in silence. Lyra's mind swirled with fear and guilt. At last, she whispered, "You gave up your home, your place, everything. For me? Why?" The human glanced at her, his lips curving into a small, tired smile. "Because I saw the truth." He said, "I saw you, and once I saw you, I could not turn away." Her tears spilled freely. She pressed her hand against her chest as if to hold her heart together. "No one has ever chosen me," she whispered. "Not once." He stopped again, his voice firm. "Then let me be the first." The world seemed to blur around her. Her breath shook. She wanted to speak, but no words came. Instead, her hand clutched his tightly. Afraid to ever let go, they traveled for hours until the sun dipped low, painting the horizon in red and gold. They found a small cave, sheltered by tall rocks. The human built a fire, its warmth chasing away the chill. Lyra sat close to it, hugging her knees, her eyes lost in the flames. Her mind returned to the council's words: fit, cursed, unwanted. Her people had stamped those words into her heart until she believed them as truth. Now, one human's gaze was trying to erase years of pain. But could it? Could one choice truly make her worthy? She glanced at him across the fire. His face was calm, lit by the glow. His hands steady as he worked with simple tools. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "What if they were right?" He looked up, his eyes sharp but gentle. "Right about what?" She lowered her head, her voice barely audible. "That I will never be enough. That I am not female, not worthy of being wanted." The fire crackled in the silence that followed. Her tears dripped onto her knees, her body trembling with the weight of those words. But then the human crossed the fire, kneeling in front of her. His hand rested lightly on hers. "They were wrong," he said firmly. "They were blind. They could not see the truth, but I can. I see you, Lyra." Her breath caught. Her alien eyes lifted slowly to his. The warmth in his gaze was stronger than the fire, steady and unshaken. "You are not cursed," he whispered. "You are not worthless. You are someone, and you are enough." Her heart broke open. A flood of emotion pouring through her chest. She sobbed, her body shaking. She tried to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. All she could do was hold his hands tightly, as if they were the only thing keeping her alive. He pulled her gently into his arms. Her small frame trembled against his chest, but slowly, slowly, the shaking eased. His warmth, his strength, wrapped around her like the home she had never known. Outside, the wind howled against the rocks. Inside the cave, her heart began to heal. When at last her sobs quieted, she whispered into his chest, her voice fragile, "Why aren't you afraid of me?" He smiled faintly, pressing his hand to the back of her head. "Because there is nothing about you to fear," he said softly, "only things to love." Her breath stopped, her eyes widened, the words sank deep, burning brighter than any flame. She clutched him tighter, as if never wanting the moment to end, and as the fire glowed, Lyra realized something she had never dared believe. She was not invisible anymore, not unwanted, not cursed. She was chosen, she was loved, she was always enough. The cave was quiet. The only sound, the crackle of the fire and the soft whistle of the wind outside. Lyra sat close to the human, her head resting against his arm. Her body was still weak from years of hunger and loneliness, but her heart was beating with a new rhythm, a rhythm she had never known before. She could not stop hearing his words in her mind. "You are enough." Every time she remembered them, her chest grew warm. For so long she had believed the lies that she was cursed, broken, not a true female, unwanted by all, yet here he was. Holding her as though she was precious, the human leaned back against the rock wall, his eyes watching the flames. He looked, but there was a quiet strength in him. His arm was still bandaged from the fight, yet he made no sound of pain. He carried himself like someone who had chosen his path, no matter how hard it might be. Lyra lifted her head slightly, her alien eyes shining in the glow. "Do you regret it?" she whispered. Her voice trembled with fear. "Leaving the colony, giving up everything. Do you regret choosing me?" He turned to her, his expression soft but steady. "No," he said firmly. "I would choose you again." Every time her lips parted, her breath caught. The words wrapped around her heart like a shield. A tear slid down her cheek. But this time it was not heavy with shame. It was light, filled with something close to joy. The night deepened, and they sat together until her eyelids grew heavy. Sleep came, but not the cold. Lonely sleep she once knew. This time she dreamed of warmth, of hands holding hers, of a voice calling her by name the next morning. The human led her out of the cave. The sun painted the sky gold. The land stretched wide and free. It was dangerous, yes, filled with wild beasts and unknown paths. But for the first time in her life, danger did not frighten her as much as being alone once had. She walked beside him, her small steps quickening to keep pace. Each step felt like she was walking away from her old life and into something new, something brighter, as days turned into weeks. She grew stronger. He taught her how to build fires, how to gather food, how to defend herself. At first she stumbled, weak and unsure, but he never scolded her, never called her worthless. He encouraged her, and slowly she began to believe she could do things she had never thought possible. One night, under a sky filled with stars, they sat together by the fire, The silence was gentle, filled with unspoken comfort. At last, Lyra turned to him, her voice nervous. "No one ever saw me as a female, not once. They always said I was nothing, but you. You look at me differently. Why?" The human's eyes met hers, and he smiled softly. "Because I see you, not their lies, not their blindness. I see you, Lyra." Her chest tightened, her heart racing. She swallowed hard before whispering, "Do you? Do you see me as a female?" The question trembled in the air. For her, it was everything years of pain, rejection, and shame carried in a single breath. The human leaned closer, his hand gently brushing the tears from her cheek. His voice was steady and kind. "I see you as more than that. I see you as someone strong, someone kind, someone who matters. And yes, I see you as a female, one far more precious than they ever deserved." Lyra's eyes widened, her breath breaking. Her whole body shook as she buried her face against his chest. Her sobs were heavy, but they were not the sobs of despair. They were the sobs of healing for the first time in her life. She felt whole. She was not invisible, not worthless, not cursed. She was seen. She was chosen. She was loved. The fire glowed, brighter as if celebrating the truth. The stars above shone like countless eyes watching over them, and in that quiet place, Lyra whispered the words she had carried in her heart since the moment he first knelt before her in the market. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, her voice trembling. "Thank you for choosing me." The human held her close, his voice low but filled with warmth. "You were always enough, Lyra. They just never saw it. But I did, and I always will." The wind outside carried the last whispers of the colony far away. They no longer mattered. The council, the bullies, the cruel voices that once broke her, all of them were gone. What remained was the truth. She was not nothing. She was not cursed. She was not invisible. She was Lyra, and she was loved.